everybody, it's Jen Kramer. Welcome to day one of creating your first interactive website with Airtable and Softr. Today we are going to walk through what exactly is Airtable, what is Softr. We're going to take a look at their pricing plans, and we're going to dig into their advantages, their disadvantages, and why they work so well together. That's all of the stuff we're going to cover today, just to give you that 30,000 foot view of these technologies before we start diving into configuring them and building with them starting tomorrow with Airtable. So first of all, let's take a quick look at the Airtable website. This is at airtable.com. And as you dig into the Airtable website, you'll see here that it is described pretty well if you take a look at their graphics and watch them for a few minutes. If you are immediately thinking to yourself, looks like a spreadsheet, you would be absolutely right. So this is a spreadsheet, but on steroids, as they've described it a few times. And it's really taking spreadsheets to the next level. So rather than the spreadsheets that you're used to from Microsoft or from Google, these spreadsheets are colorful, they're fun, and they have a lot more features and functionality built into them. So an Airtable spreadsheet is called a base. That is a fancy word for database. Because it's not quite a database. There's, if you're actually a database person, there's a little bit more going on here than you would think in terms of your basic spreadsheet. But it's definitely not a spreadsheet. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So thus the new name, base. So I'm going to show you one of these in detail in just a moment. As you scroll on down the Airtable page here, you'll see all the happy customers and so forth. You'll see they have lots and lots of templates and themes. And there's all kinds of integrations that go with Airtable. If you start working in the no-code universe, you will find Airtable mentioned all the time. They integrate with all kinds of technologies, which is really great. And so we're going to look at Softr, but there's a whole lot of other ones that you can integrate it with. And so what you're going to need to do before day two is be sure to sign up for the free version of Airtable. We do not need the paid versions of anything in this course. And so we're going to work with that free version of Airtable. You can just click that sign up for free button up there on the top before we get to day two. So let's take a look at Airtable in a little bit more detail. If you click on this link here for the Airtable universe and look around at their bases that they have on display there, see if you can find the one that's called Every Star Trek Ever, personally one of my favorites. And this is a comprehensive base, or at least it's trying to be talking about all of the books and materials that were ever created on Star Trek. When you look at this screen, you might think, oh my goodness, this is the most complicated thing ever. That is partially because what we have going on here on the side is this thing called apps. Apps are something that Airtable can do for you in the paid versions. We are not going to be exploring apps in this course. Feel free to just go on ahead and close that window. What's left here is something that looks kind of like a database. So as you can see here, we have here titles, various titles of the book. We have pictures of the covers right here inside of the database, and along with synopses and authors. So let's just look at these to give you a sense of what's here. We have a title. Anytime you see the little double-headed arrow, when you click that, you can expand it. In this case, it's going to expand for the whole field since we clicked on this here on the title. So it's going to give you a little summary of this one. This is the first book on Star Trek. There's the title. Here's what the cover looks like. We can see its synopsis, author, and so forth. This is everything that the owner of this base has configured for this. And as you see here, it's got a couple of hidden fields as well, which you can display. They're related movies, related episodes by numbers. There we go. And related episodes by name. So if you're really big into the TV series, in this particular case, you could go ahead and link all of that together, or you can just hide that information. When you click on, say, just the cover here and click on its double-headed arrow, you'll see just the image by itself. There's the ability here to put in longer pieces of text. So here, if we had the ability to edit the space, we would be able to click in here and type away just like it was any other kind of document, and had some basic formatting that goes with it as well. So that's not so scary, right? That just kind of looks like a database. It's got these fun colors in here for tags and so forth. And we're going to walk through how to create a base tomorrow. I'm going to show you how to do that in great detail. Let's get into the pricing here for a moment. We are going to be using the free version. There are, of course, various paid versions, and I would encourage you to explore those. It's a great product, but as you're getting started, the free version is what you need. So what you'll see here is you can read through all of the offerings that they have here and how they vary across their plans. I'm just going to point out a couple of things to you. So you can create as many bases as you want with any of these plans, but the number of records per base is different depending on what plan you use. What is a record? It's the row in the spreadsheet. It's just that row. And so you can only have 1,200 rows in the free version of your spreadsheet. That is more than enough for what we're going to be doing. You're limited in the amount of disk space. So in other words, if you are trying to do something with photos in particular, photos take up a lot of room, and that will eat up 2 gigabytes pretty quickly, especially if you're taking your pictures straight off your digital camera and trying to put them into Airtable. So as you can keep on scrolling on down here and see that obviously the free version has many fewer things than some of the other versions of the software, but it does have some basic support, which is good. It's got a little email support. It's got a nice knowledge database, which you can go and look up answers to questions. It doesn't do any of the advanced stuff like additional colors or the app functionality or the cool forms or anything like that. That's all possible beyond the scope of this course, but it's there and available. Let me know if you want another course on that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's Airtable in a nutshell. Let's take a quick look at Softr. Softr is a website builder, so I'm going to put it in the category with Squarespace and Wix, if you're familiar with those particular software packages. Those are designed for people who have no coding background and who can click around and put together a website. So Softr is like that. But unlike Squarespace and Wix, where integrating Airtable can be significantly more difficult, Softr makes it really easy, and that's really where its big strength is. So as it says here, building your powerful websites and web apps on Airtable in 10 minutes. And so in other words, if you are just going to be building regular old websites that are not going to have any Airtable integrations, I'm not sure that Softr is necessarily the best choice for you. You might get more flexibility if you take a look at some other products like Squarespace or Wix, but Softr is really, really great for what it does here. So let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit more here. As they say, they called them the Lego of web app building. I think that's reasonable. I'm going to scroll down here to their summary where they say choose your building blocks. If you think about a web page, historically we've thought about web pages as a whole entire page. They're going to encourage you to think about it as a series of chunks of content called blocks. Thus their logo looks like a block. And these blocks we'll talk about in detail in day 3. You can just block these right on top of each other to put together a web page. And they have a ton of different choices here, and it's very straightforward to set this up. Then we're going to connect the Airtable base. We're going to do that on day 4 and start to display that information on our Softr web page. And so that is the end of the story. Towards the end of the course, we'll be setting all of that up in place. Let's take a quick peek at Softr's pricing, because this is really important to consider and to understand. It's not easy to understand as you first look at it. So here, if you take a look at this, it's got pricing for all kinds of stages. If you're building what they call a website, that website is going to start off by being free. Then of course, there's paid plans here. But read carefully about what's included in your various plans. So in the free version of the website, you can have Airtable integration for up to 20 rows and 2 filters. Only 20 rows. Remember, those are those records. And so even though you can have 1,200 records in Airtable, Softr is only going to display 20 of them. Notice that, though, that doesn't change as you go to the other versions here of the website inside of Softr. However, if you go with the web app option, in other words, this is going to be more interactive. Okay, because technically speaking, a website and a web app are not really all that different. A web app is just something where you're going to be able to sling around your data quite a bit more than a website, which tends to be a little bit more static and is probably more content focused. So a web app here, once again, the free version, 20 rows, that's all. But when you start paying money here, then you're going to get integration with a lot more rows inside of your Airtable database. So if you're considering Softr for building a website, you're going to want to think very carefully about your Airtable database. You want to think very carefully about how many rows you're going to have in that database and how much you're going to need to display on the Softr website. That's going to help drive which one of these plans is going to be right for you. But in any case, in my course, we're only going to use the free version. Okay, so let's look a little bit more detail about the advantages and disadvantages of Airtable and Softr and why we would want to integrate them. So starting with Airtable, it has some positives and some less goods. I wouldn't necessarily call these negatives. Some of these things are just the way technology works with this type of data, as opposed to something where it's truly the company didn't do something well. So we're going to call them positives and less goods. So for positives, anything that's a spreadsheet is going to work inside of Airtable. You can import your own spreadsheets. The Airtable and spreadsheets are designed to go together, which is really great. You probably already have a good sense of how Airtable works. Really simple and fast to configure. You're going to see that in class tomorrow. And it's going to offer you some field types that are not available inside of spreadsheets. So the fact that you can tag things inside of Airtable is really powerful, very helpful for filtering, and we're going to see that over the course of this class. A couple of things that are not so good to keep in mind with Airtable: it's really not the tool for building a whole website. And I think Airtable would probably agree with that. You're probably going to be better off integrating Airtable with another technology rather than trying to use their tools. And another thing, just like a spreadsheet where you enter your information one row at a time, we're going to do the same thing, at least in the free version of Airtable. Some of the paid versions, you can actually make a whole form for that, but we're not going to have that luxury working with the free version of Airtable. For Softr, there's also some positives and negatives. That whole block formula is really going to help you think about how to drive a good story inside of a web page. I'm pretty excited by these new block models and how they fit things together and how they compartmentalize your thinking about the story that you're trying to tell into each element row by row. I think it's going to help make better websites in a lot of ways. All kinds of blocks to use. We're going to talk about that extensively. And the Airtable integration is mostly easy. It could be easier, but it's mostly easy. Still early days for no-code tools. I bet that stuff is coming. And one of the best parts about Softr is that the responsiveness of your designs are already built in. What does that mean? It works on phones, it works on tablets, and it works on desktop computers. So any size screen, that's all built into Softr. Couple of things that are not so good. Anytime you make things easier, you're going to give up the ability to customize. Customize means complicated. You're going to introduce all kinds of levels of complication, as opposed to when you make things easy. You do that often by taking away some of the customizations. And so that is something to keep in mind as you dig into Softr. There's also, as I mentioned before, limitations about how much of your Airtable base is going to be able to display on your Softr website. So keep that in mind as well. Why would we want to connect them? So we can get the best of both worlds. We'll have Airtable that does a great job of keeping track of all of our information, and Softr, which is going to pull that information in and display it. So rather than having to build one brand new web page for each pet in the neighborhood, that's a lot of pages, we can instead list our pets inside of our Airtable base. Softr will pull that information out, create an individual page for each one of those pets, and display them all on the page in a grid and do all kinds of other interesting things with the display of the data, as opposed to actually holding that data and tracking it, which is what Airtable does. So that's enough for talking for today. This is your handout that comes with your email for today. And just to highlight for you what is inside of this particular document, there are links to the Airtable and the Softr websites so that you can go and check those out. I've also given you a link to my slides if you'd like to refer to those later. And then finally, for homework before day 2, be sure to sign up for your free accounts at Airtable and at Softr. Do not pay any money for these things. We're going to work with just the free versions of these. I'm excited to see you on day 2. I hope you enjoyed this quick overview of Airtable and Softr, and I will see you tomorrow.